Hey bass players, good day, eh? Today we're taking off to the Great White North to demo the SansAmp GED 2112 Geddy Lee signature rack mount preamp. Stay tuned to the end of this video. We're going to open this bad boy up. I'm going to show you some hacks that you can do with some jumpers inside that you might find useful. For the couple of you watching this video that might not know who Geddy Lee is, Rush is a progressive rock band that debuted in the mid-70s and established a huge, almost cult-like following. They continued to get more and more popular throughout the 80s and 90s and continued to sell out arenas all over the world until they stopped touring in 2015. In 2020, the band's drummer, Neil Peart, who many consider to be the greatest rock drummer ever, tragically died at the age of 67. Lead singer and bassist Geddy Lee is also considered one of the best rock bassists ever, and his snarling and prog bass lines are the stuff of legend. Geddy stopped performing with on-stage amps in the mid-90s when he transitioned to using SansAmp, RBI, and RPM preamps. At the heart of this all-analog pre is a great-sounding SVT-style amp. What makes this preamp special are the two internal preamps that run in parallel. It's not a new concept. Many bassists, from John Entwistle to Billy Sheehan, have used dual rigs to create their sound. The goal is to create sonic character in the upper register while keeping the lows big and clean. The drive preamp of the GED 2112 is based on a SansAmp RPM, and the deep preamp section offers low-end boost for thick saturated tones. On the front panel, we have an input jack, an input selector switch that allows you to have two instruments plugged into the back simultaneously and switch back and forth between the two. When you're plugged into the front, this feature is disengaged. So let's start with the deep section. This section has a preset EQ curve to Geddy specs, so there's no real EQ knob, but what we do have is a saturation knob. The saturation knob adjusts the overall amount of gain and overdrive, like the output section of a tube amp. Let's take a listen. In the drive section, we have the drive knob, which controls the overall gain and overdrive. A mid shift and a mid, which is a parametric EQ, sweeping from 170 Hz up to 3K. The blend control allows you to blend in the dry signal with the SansAmp. Super handy if you want to blend in some unaffected articulation and clarity along with the distortion. All right, so let's take a listen. As I'm doing this, I'm going to adjust the output gain because as you add drive or any of the EQ, the levels do change a little bit. So we'll do it without the drive at first. I will add in some drive about halfway up. We'll turn the level down just a little bit. One thing I'm going to do is turn the blend all the way up. That way we're just getting the SansAmp so you can hear this distortion. About 3/4 of the way. You can really start to hear it dig in. All the way up. So let's listen to these mids. I'm going to turn the mids all the way up. I'm just going to cycle through here. Pulling the mids out. So for rock and roll, most of the time I'd probably pull mids out, kind of give it a nice scoop sound, get out of the way of all the distorted guitars and everything, vocals, and I'd probably go somewhere around 500, maybe even a little bit lower, but just see what this sounds like. Nice. We'll get some more distortion in here. The bass and the treble knobs are centered at 80 Hz and 3K respectively, and you can cut or boost by up to 12 dB. In the back, we have inputs for the A and B, which are selectable on the front. There's also a 20 dB pad for the instrument level. An effects loop with a 50-50 mix switch. When engaged, half the signal is routed through the effects processor, and the other half passes directly through the 1/4 inch and XLR outputs of the drive section. There's an unaffected buffered line out. 1/4 inch and XLR outputs can be padded by 20 dB for line and instrument levels. A ground lift, and finally a tuner out. Hey, as I mentioned at the top, there's some hidden mods under the hood of these preamps. Inside, there's several jumpers that can change the unit's functionality. Okay, so let's pop the top here and take a look inside. I'm going to show you where we've got the jumpers here in relation to where everything else is inside the unit. So on the back portion here, you'll see where there's a tie jumper and a bypass and mute jumper. So the tie ties the two outputs to a single mono output. That could be super useful if you're not sending, two DIs to a board or however you're running your rig. That could be really helpful. So you can tie those together. And then the one next to it is bypass and mute. From the factory, this jumper is set to bypass the drive section when the front button is disengaged. Moving the jumper to the right will enable the front button to mute the entire unit. Then on the other side over here, we've got the tight switch. It comes with the tight switch engaged from the factory. If you want to disengage it, you could move that jumper over to the left. That would disengage the tight switch. Tight isn't really like a bright switch. It's not quite as bright, but it does add some tooth, probably around 2 or 3K. So anyway, there's the jumpers inside. I hope you found all that helpful if you want to modify this unit to your specs. The drive section of this thing is really musical and really responds well to whether you're playing hard or playing softer. Let's just take a listen to that right now. Hey, I hope you found this video helpful if you're thinking about getting one of these units. It's not just a Geddy Lee emulator, but it's a really functional bass pre with loads of features for the pro and amateur bassist. Hey, as always, I appreciate you watching. Please like and subscribe, and I hope to see you again soon. Take care.